And welcome into Poke the Bear episode 80, the Daniel Vladar episode, the only number 80 in Bruins history. I am Evan Marinofsky, alongside Conor Ryan, who is on location. Conor, inform the people, where are you broadcasting from today?
Evan, once again, I am broadcasting from a place that, again, I usually love to be at, Dunkin' Donuts, but again, circumstances are less than ideal. It's always funny when we talk about this, like hyped it up, like it's like live from the Comedy Cellar. It's like Conor Ryan, like live from the friggin' Dunkin' Donuts parking lot in Marlborough, Massachusetts. But that's where I am. The water heater in our apartment exploded and flooded everything. So we are improvising today, and I had my coffee, I had my wake up wrap, so I'm ready to go now, trudging ahead with less than ideal circumstances. How are you, Evan?
This, I'm doing better, I would say, but at the same time, you had a coffee and wake up wraps, and it seems like this is the worst of it, right? You're on the way back up now. It feels like, in a sense.
I
So
would certainly hope so, Evan. I would certainly hope so.
the Dunks, see, you got to get a Dunk sponsorship at some point. Like they got to sponsor you one of these days. You're doing remote shows. Like, you know how like a lot of radio shows will go and do shows like at like Hurricane O'Reilly's and all
Yeah.
these different places. You're at Dunks. We should do a podcast at Dunks, like inside of the Dunks, next to like the old dudes sitting around at 5 a.m. having their black coffee, or just like you kind of in amongst the people. I think we got to do this at some
I
point.
mean, why else do you think I pivoted to TikTok, Evan? Is try to get that sweet, sweet Dunkin' endorsement money. Hasn't happened yet, but we'll see what happens.
Yes, but anyways, speaking of teams or places that are out of place, that are doing things from different locations. This is not Bruins related, but it's kind of funny. We can poke fun at it. The Coyotes came out on Thursday saying, or it was reported that they could be playing at Arizona State for the next 3 to 4 years, which is amazing. I think that is incredible. Arizona State is opening up a new all-purpose arena for, I believe, gymnastics, wrestling, hockey, basketball, I would imagine, or if they have their own thing for that already. But for
They might have
hockey
a
and
bigger arena for that, but
I
yeah.
think they absolutely do. So it's hockey, gymnastics, so other things. It'll be sick for the Arizona State hockey team, but for the Arizona Coyotes hockey team, playing in front of a 3,200 seat arena on Arizona State's campus, basically, not exactly what you picture for an NHL franchise.
Yeah, I'm really glad that the NHL had that meeting with people up in Quebec City, and like I'm sure they mapped out a good presentation. Like, hey, we've got a really passionate fan base. The markets here is ready for it. We have a pretty brand new arena that last I checked held what about 18,000 spectators. Pretty good deal up here. Want to come up? And NHL was like, nah, man, we're gonna send the Coyotes who refuse to die to a 5,000 seat like arena as like a guest in their place. Like, good job, guys. The fact that that team is still sticking around in Arizona, if in a few years Austin Matthews doesn't go and sign with Arizona and give them some spark, some hope of life, what a waste of everyone's time this has been. Because if that happens, sooner or later they're just going to end up in Houston. See how they do down there, but the fact that like this is being mapped out as a potential solution for them is just embarrassing. It's surprising, no, considering all
No.
we've seen from the Coyotes, where it's like they weren't even paying their bill to stay at their old arena. It's just a complete clown show there. So good to see the NHL is pretty much flipping the bird to Quebec City, but like, thanks but no thanks with your brand new fancy arena. We're gonna share a spot with a college. Good job, guys. Good job for the
I
game.
text I texted you and Ty this morning, and I said, "Am I the only one who would love to play at ASU for a few years, or am I just still 22 years old?" And you said you were 22
22.
years old.
Yes.
So that is I think for younger players, playing at ASU will be terrific. I mean, geez, it's a hip happening
New
college
fac-
environment.
new facility at the very least, but sheesh.
Yeah, no. For an NHL franchise, absolutely not. I mean, even like what's crazy is that playing in any arena, college arena, is not great, right? Even like Mullins Center's 10,000 seats, or like Yost, or like Minnesota's or North Dakota's, like they have these really state of the art facilities, but still for an NHL franchise, no. What are you doing? And it just kind of goes back to the whole fact of like what a complete mess that team is. And it's incredible how bad of a mess it is, right? Because it's not just like they're a good team that's fallen on some hard arena times and they're struggling for a place. Like this from top to bottom is just a shit show.
Well,
So
that's the thing too is when that news came out, first you're like, "Really?" And then you like have a pause, you collect your thoughts, and you're like, "This makes sense. This is the
yeah,
Coyotes. Yeah, this makes sense, right? Of course."
exactly. No, it's this. I'm not surprised at all that that's the case. I'm interested to see how turnout is for games, because think about it. I don't know how far Temp is from or Tempe, however you say it, is from where they are now, which
Glendale,
is
yeah.
they're in Glendale. I think it's somewhat close,
It's
but
in the
still, I'm
whole Phoenix metropolitan area, which if you've been through Phoenix, is a lot of just like strip malls and like Raising Canes, and that's all it really is. It's very flat. It's not really a hip happening place. And maybe ASU is better, but
I've never
Christ,
been, but honestly, like
you're not
I
missing much,
always
Evan.
I always want to go during the winter because it's nice and warm there. But it is interesting like how they'll do. I wonder like there aren't enough seats to do like student nights, right? Like if I'm a student on ASU's campus, granted I'm a hockey fan, I would want to go. But I wonder if they're gonna have promos because there aren't even enough seats to do like, hey, we're gonna give ASU like 1,000 tickets for this price, and then what do you leave for the rest of fans? Like 2,200? I mean, it doesn't even make any
I mean,
sense.
let's be real though. I'm sure there'll be plenty of seats available, even if that team like falls ass backwards and gets Conor Bedard or one of these guys in a few years. I don't think you're going to have a packed 5,000 seat arena anytime soon. That's why, again, either commit to going to Houston and see how that does, which maybe is a better spot, who knows, or you go to Quebec City or something like that. But right now, it's just wasting everyone's time trying to stick it out and hopefully wishing that maybe Austin Matthews arrives in a few years, which it's not really a good pitch when you're like, hey, Austin, you can go to Toronto, which, again, media, like the expectations, pretty tough on players. But how about you go back home and play in a 5,000 seat arena?
I saw
Tempting, right?
somewhere I saw somewhere it was less than 5,000. I saw that
That'd
it
be
was
even
like
better.
32. I saw somewhere it was 3,200. Um,
They should just have
and I
no
wouldn't be
seats.
surprised by it.
They have
Yeah,
standing
maybe
room
I
only.
just standing room
Make
only.
very intimate
I think
setting.
it's I think it's 3,200. That's what I'm seeing on Twitter now. So it's either 3,200 or 5,000 either way, nowhere near enough for a NHL arena. But
No.
incredible what's happening down there. The Bruins play the Coyotes by the way on tonight technically, Friday
Yes.
night. They play them
Their
Friday
last
night.
game in
So
Glendale, probably.
yeah, in the Gila River Arena, or whatever the hell it's called. Which again, they struggle to sell out there
Of
every night.
course.
Because who would want to go watch that shit? Anyways, speaking of the Bruins are out, as I said, are out in this area. Played the Avalanche on Wednesday. Heartbreaking loss. Started on True TV. Started with taking over from Practical Jokers, and then they go over to TNT. But tough loss, up 3-1 in the third. They blow it in the last 10 minutes. Then obviously Kale McCarr, my guy, just ends. I was pumped. I
Of
was
course.
pumped. Um, he scores the game winner in OT. But at the same time, what are the silver linings you can take from this? Because again, that Avs team, pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's plenty of silver linings you can take away from it. I think most teams, if you leave Ball Arena with at least 1 point, it kind of constitutes a pretty good day at the office, right? I mean, Avalanche entered the game with 16-game home winning streak. Elite team, even without Nathan McKinnon, who was only played about 2 minutes of that game. Even without him in the lineup, you saw firsthand like how skill and elite that team can be, and how they can pretty much dice up any decor you have out there. So I'm sure, yeah, you take some of the positives from it. Like Jake DeBrusk still is, been very, very solid over the last couple of games now, which is great. Not only in the fact that you've got a guy in the bottom six that's playing well, but also he's raising his trade value, which should make every single party happy in this whole ordeal. Hopefully, he gets moved and you get a good return for him. Um, but even then, like even if you want to focus on the positives, the way that game ended, still like it makes it a pretty crappy way to move on from it, right? Like not just the fact that you let 2 points slip away, but that could have been probably the statement win of the season, right? I mean, for the first two periods, the Bruins were executing very well in terms of not just obviously, converting on their chances, but the PK looked good. Even though, guys like Makar were getting shots, they were kept to the outside. They were slowing them down in the neutral zone quite a bit. Like, as much as I think people have talked about the last few weeks about Bruins need to make upgrades on defense and, do they need like a guy like Chikrin or what have you? For the first two periods, you saw like, how the Bruins can execute and how they can, hold their own when they have all their guys operating as one unit of, keeping them to the outside, slowing them down, getting two guys on one skater crossing the blue line. Things that you have to do to limit these teams. You saw that being executed. Then in the third, everything went away. Like the Bruins, like pretty much switched to like prevent defense and like pretty much took their foot off the gas. And what do you know? Colorado came back and capitalized, and that's what that's what not just good teams but elite teams do. That's more or less what I wrote about post game. Is the Bruins? I think you can write up that they're still a very good team, the team that's going to be in the mix, as we've said before, but to get to that next tier where only, Colorado and Tampa and maybe Florida, like where they are right now, you got to take that next step. And so for the Bruins, it's not letting, a strong opening 40 minutes, go to the wayside where you get 1 point out of it. Even without like Linus Olmark and how he played, you're lucky you even exited that game with a point because he was just peppered over those final 20 minutes of that game. So, uh, some good things here and there in terms of making, capitalizing on some opportunities. You kind of played to your game, really limited the Colorado strengths early on there, but to have it end in that fashion of whether it be, taking your foot off the gas or over that final, when they pull the extra skater and you're not able to get that clear Martians kind of pass or whatever it was, whether it was a deflection, goes into no man's land and they bury it right after that. It's just a tough hit for the Bruins when it should have been a really key statement win.
As much as I liked their game in the first two periods, doesn't this game kind of go back to how the Bruins have been in the past couple of years, where they're this team, and granted, this I kind of saw it as like a playoff series happening in one game, right? Where they start off hot. You look at Tampa in 17-18 and Tampa in 19-20, they come out firing in the first game, and the foot comes off the gas. And you look at the same with the Islanders. They won game one against them in this past year and looked great, and then the foot kind of slowly came off the gas. And it just felt like the same thing where they had the foot on the gas for the first two periods, and then in the end, they just couldn't finish it. And it feels like this is kind of a trend that this team has had over the past years. It's hard to compare a single game to a playoff series, but that was kind of what this reminded me of in that sense, where just they weren't getting it done. And I think that is just an issue that they have. And I mean, the Avs, I mean, man, they're a freaking good team. Like, that's a team that should do a lot. That team
Should
should, yes,
should
should, should be making a lot of noise come the postseason. Doesn't mean they will, but they should. Another big storyline coming from this game came immediately. Taylor Hall comes across the middle, kind of rings the bell of Nathan McKinnon, but on second,
decapitates him. If you're
yes.
on Avalanche Twitter, you decapitated him on that play, Evan.
I think you might have sent this to me. I like how the Avalanche tweeted when they scored a goal. They were like, "That one was for Nate." And it's like, he's probably just got like
He's
a
not.
broken nose.
Yeah,
Like,
he's not dead. Jesus,
yeah.
guys.
But so it looked scary upon impact. I mean, when the
Oh
first
yeah.
happened, it was like, "Holy shit!" Turns out it was just an awkward collision where Nathan McKinnon's stick came and hit himself in the nose. And that's kind of what caused the blood. And I would imagine, I haven't looked today, but I would imagine his nose is probably broken. And I understand Gabriel Landeskog's thing with that. I get it. Like, that's your friend. That's the best player on your team. Like, I totally get it. We would probably say the same thing if the tails were turned. But I don't think Taylor Hall had to actually answer for it. There's no reason to drop the gloves for a clean hit. I don't know. And it was a fluky hit too. There's nothing he can do there. So interested to hear what I know. I think you agree with me on this.
Yeah, and I think through the first two periods of that game, I was ready to rip my hair out, and who knew the game was only going to get worse once the Avalanche came back. But through the first two periods, I was like, all right, the Bruins are on pace right now to have a statement win, snap Colorado's 16-game home win streak. Really, really strong performance. And half the narrative after this game is going to be Taylor Hall not answering the bell for a hit that was clean. Like the fact that he even served 2 minutes was only because of that rule that you can't like fully rescind a major, right? Like completely a really unfortunate circumstance of how it ended up, but clean hit. Like and that's what most of the narrative was is like I saw like going into third like oh it's gonna be a complete clown show because Taylor Hall didn't step up. It's like no, what actually happened is Colorado after taking that stupid penalty that Eric Johnson took, they played to their strengths again and walloped the Bruins, playing to their actual strengths instead of going around and chasing around Taylor Hall who didn't want to engage for again a play that wasn't his fault. Like and it's one of those things where again I agree with you Evan. It's not the issue with like Landeskog defending his teammate. I think we talked about this a few weeks ago with Tuukka Rask, where it's like you can like agree on both sides and come to a rational conclusion instead of it being one drastically different thing one way or the other, right? Like good on Landeskog for like stepping up for his teammate, clean hit or not, what have you. Like it's what a captain does. Good to see. But also Taylor Hall didn't need to answer the bell there to fight him for a sequence like that. Like both things can be right. And again, what do you know? Instead of the Avalanche, who as much as they've got some pretty big forwards, aren't a bruising team. They're not like the Washington Capitals or what have you. That's not their style of play. Instead of chasing Hall around and getting away from their strengths, what do they do in the third? They looked at him like, all right, well, we can keep on trying to crush track the shit out of Taylor Hall and getting Bruins more power play chances, or we can outskate them and have them sucking win the whole third period. What do you think worked out pretty well? And of course, like at the end of it too, post game, Landeskog, gave what you'd expect. Oh, I got to step up for McKinnon, like whether it's a clean hit or not, stand up for him. Which then people then take as like you stood up for him, and it energized the crew. It's like no, they actually smoked the Bruins because they played to their strengths and won the friggin' game. Like that. That's
Yeah.
what the actual consequence of it was. It's not that because they saw Eric Johnson like beating the crap out of Taylor Hall. Like, yeah, this is how we're gonna come back, guys. Doing that, putting the Bruins on the power play. That's how we do it. So yeah, it's just frustrating of how like that narrative can't fall somewhere in the middle of like good on Landeskog for stepping up and good on Hall for not engaging, because what the Bruins got out of it was a 5-on-3 where they scored 2 goals in what, a minute and 10 seconds. So both things can be right. Like you can agree to that. Like it's not one drastic thing the other. It didn't have to be a complete goon fest, and the Bruins, didn't have to just fully engage. Like you can settle on something in between. It's not that hard, guys.
Why would Taylor Hall also take himself off the ice for
Right,
5 minutes in a winnable game in Colorado against a team that has a 16-game home win streak? Why would you take yourself off the ice for a clean fluky hit?
right.
And you don't even fight. Like what is the point? So
And
I don't
it's
understand.
and it's also one of those things too. Sorry to cut you off, Evan, but
Oh, no.
like it's like one of those situations where people talk about like Landeskog, and he's a good captain. He's a physical guy and all that stuff. But I saw people talking on the radio today like he's like this like big like fighter enforcer. No, he's not. Like, I think some Bruins fan tweeted out a thing of like early in his career where he was getting mixed up and Lucic wanted to like drop the gloves, and he kept his gloves on. Like literally had him like holding him by the collar and didn't like answer the bell there. So where was the discourse there? Like you pick your fights. Like Landeskog chased around Taylor Hall, wasn't going to engage, and then what? He shoved DeBrusque out of the crease at one point. Really, really, like
Tough
adding a
guy.
yeah, exactly, like good on him for standing up for his teammates, but he's not Tom Wilson out there. Like
Yeah.
again, good for him to step up, but let's be rational with all the narratives with a game like this, which when it comes to things like toughness, answering the bell, all that things, you can never get like a normal, like reasonable take. It's got to be one extreme or the other.
Yeah, also fighting Lucic sounds miserable any way
Yes,
you put it.
I would not
So I
advise
don't
that
play
either.
I don't blame Landeskog for dipping out of Lucic there. Before we get to JT Miller and some interesting stuff you wrote about him and the Bruins going for him last week, I do want to get to some news around reverse retros because everyone's kind of been wondering. Bruins had a sick reverse retro. A lot of teams had really cool reverse retros. Where the hell are they? And NHL News at Puck Report NHL on Twitter reported the NHL reverse retro program by Adidas is set to return next season per Iceletics. This
Icelandic,
program
yeah.
yeah, Iceletics. They're in Seattle. The program will once again involve all 32 teams with new designs, with some reportedly bending the definition of the reverse retro. Now, what I would imagine is that there's a few teams who do not have retro jerseys, so there's nothing they can do about that. But what I will say when it comes to the Bruins, because other teams are other teams, the Bruins had a nice reverse retro. If they brought back the same reverse retro, I would not complain at all.
Yeah, I'm like already still surprised that they haven't brought those ones back. Like it's typical NHL like big brain theory to be like, all right, we have these really unique, unless you're like the Detroit Red Wings, really unique jerseys that we have. Let's roll them out for a 56 game season where there's no fans in attendance, where they'll wear them what 10 games, maybe, if we're lucky,
Maybe.
and then get rid of them. Put them in like
Yeah.
the Disney
Yeah.
vault. Like, remember when you'd watch like the old Disney movies and they throw them in the Disney vault where you didn't even know what that meant? That's where all the reverse retros are now because you can't buy them anymore, I don't think. So for the
No, you
NHL one
can't.
to just for them to just scrap it after 1 year was ridiculous anyway. But it's I mean, who knows what the actual next design is going to be? Like I joked and said it was going to be the Pooh Bear, which I doubt it. But at this point, just bring back the one they had for the Lake Tahoe game. Like it was different enough. Like I don't really know. There's a lot of detractors with it. You had Meth Bear back in, which was like a major
Mhm.
plus, right? So just bring that one back. Don't make it too complicated. But knowing the
Yeah,
Bruins is
also
going to be like just an all black one or something like that, which would be terrible. It'd be like the New
yeah,
Jersey one.
yeah, or like the B jersey they wear this year. It's just like
Yeah,
like that. Is there anything wrong with the jersey? No, but it's just like bland and so like bleh. And I think like it goes back to the past bunch of winter classics and outdoor games, except for Tahoe that they've had. It's all like, oh, let's harken back to like the 20s or the 30s or the 40s. And it's the same with these B jerseys that they're wearing. And it's like, I wish, go back to the 80s and 90s look. Like that to me is what you should be aiming for. And the reverse retro did it really well. And the yellow popped and
yeah,
just, it worked. So I hope it somehow ties in with those jerseys.
yeah.
If they change it a little bit, like fine, but don't divert from it. Like the reverse retro was sick. That was a sick uniform. And it's sad that it just kind of like is gone, and you can't
One
get
and
them
done.
anymore. You're
Yeah, you
right, because
can't. And if those were
my friend was looking. But one of my UMass friends, his girlfriend wants to surprise him with like a Kale McCarr jersey, and initially she's like, "Can you find a UMass Kale McCarr jersey?" And I said, "No, yeah, it's like impossible."
yes,
But I was like, I was thinking like reverse retro for the Avs. It was like the Nordiques logo, I think, last year, and I was like, that would be so sick. And they're nowhere to be found on the NHL's website. Obviously, you can find it on like some like website from like China or something like that. But that's
right.
not reliable.
No,
But for real stuff, they don't have it. So yes, they are not selling those anymore. So hopefully they go back to a normal reverse retro at least. Um, what they had last year. I mean, like I think a team like the Ducks could use a whole new one. Remember what the Ducks was, where it was like the duck coming out of the corner of the jersey,
right, yeah.
Like there's some teams that could definitely have some rebrands.
Detroit one's gonna be wild. I'm probably gonna be red and white and just have like a big D on it. That's all it's gonna
No
be.
way.
Yeah,
Whoa.
they're kind of stuck in a corner, aren't they? They're in a kind of a rough spot.
I liked what Montreal did last year. They had blue jerseys. I was like, oh, those were pretty sick. I'll give them that. So, I don't know. I mean, I like when they release a ton of these new uniforms. I just hope that they like do things logically, which you can't really count on them doing all the time.
No,
Speaking of logic, JT Miller is a guy that a lot of people have their eyes on for the Bruins. It was reported, I believe, was it by Friedman that the Bruins were in on? They've at least
Sarah
inquired.
Valley had them
Sarah
as
Valley.
someone kicking the tires of the Bruins, along with Calgary, Minnesota, and New York.
Yes, so kicking the tires. And I think the big issue with that is there's no doubt that JT Miller would fit here. He could be long term here. He would definitely be a good guy down the middle. The problem comes down to what are you trading for him? And do you have enough when you're going up against those teams like Minnesota and New York? I mean, what's the deal?
Yeah, no, I think that's the challenge, and I don't think the return would be as much as let's say like Chikrin, where it's what Swayman starting with it. Like I don't think you have to give up Swayman for it, but I think Sarah Valley said you're looking at probably a first round pick easily, a highly touted prospect, which I think for the Bruins that's where it gets into all right, what constitutes that, right? Like are we looking at a guy like Stadnika? Are we looking at a guy who's maybe risen, like brought his value up, like Vakanainen, and how valuable he could be? Or are we talking about like the crown jewels of the farm system, where it's Mason Lohrei or Fabian Lysell or what have you? And Sarah Valley also said it could be like another guy on top of that. Which, all right, if you're the Bruins and let's say it's a first, DeBrusque maybe, and like Vakanainen, do you do that? Probably, right? If it's for JT Miller,
Yeah.
I think. I mean, I think that one's it's where I think you involve whether it's to talk about Chikrin or like a guy like Miller, where I think people get hesitant is when it includes one of like the three guys: Swayman, Lohrei, or Lysell. Everything else, I think, is
Yes.
more or less fair game, right? Where it's all right. Whether it's a guy like Sanika, which I don't even know how much value he has now. I mean, you'd think he'd be up in the NHL if there was like you've got guys like Steen and Vakanainen who've brought their game up, and it'd be unfortunate. Like Vakanainen's playing very well, but again, part of the bigger piece to get a guy like JT Miller. you do what you got to do there to make the most of this window and also next year. I think that's why, when I wrote about JT Miller, what his appeal is not just the fact that he's a point per game guy in Vancouver, 28 years old, but also you get him under contract next year at a pretty affordable deal too. So worst case scenario, Bergeron retires. You at least have one top six guy in the fold. And Bergeron comes back, you got Bergeron, Miller, Nosek, all those guys in place for at least one more year, which is
Coil.
yeah, Goyle, a good thing to have right there. So I think for the Bruins, it makes plenty of sense as to why you target him. It's all about what the cost is going to be because again, if we mapped out, as I said, like DeBrusk and Vakanainen in the first, then you go, all right, like, got a gift to get, but you got this guy in the fold. If it's Lorai or Lysell, then people go, all right, but that's
I
kind of what you have to face when it comes to, having this kind of all in mindset.
I was talking about this with Ty on Bruins Beat on Monday, and we said there are three untouchables. It's Swayman, Lowry, and Lysell. There's no reason. Those are the three guys you really would love to keep, right? You need a big, good skating left shot defenseman for the future. Lowry seems to be that. Lysell, good dynamic offensive winger, need that. Swayman, goalie of the future, need that. If it's for Chikrin, I wouldn't hesitate. I mean, not hesitate. That's the wrong word. I wouldn't. I would think about giving up Lowry in a deal for that because that's sort of like a future left shot defenseman for a current left shot defenseman, which you're
Yeah.
trying to win now. So maybe that makes a little more sense. But for JT Miller, no. No, not for JT Miller. Carries an AAV of 5.25 million this year and next year. Then he's a UFA. Um, Hopefully, if you got him, you'd be able to keep him. Like I think that would be
Yeah.
ideal. Sweeney's usually pretty good at that. So again, it's interesting to see. I mean, the Canucks also like did take on the OEL contract. So like not to, they're not the smartest team. Granted, they have a new kind of ownership or front office there
Yeah.
now. But I don't know. I mean, maybe you can get away with Vakanainen's raised his value a lot. It would help also, I guess, if Saboro was still not
Yeah.
was still on the ice, but then maybe Vakanainen wouldn't be. So you have Vakanainen raising his status. Steen, DeBrusk is currently raising his status. So I don't know if Vancouver would jump at that.
Yeah.
But if you could, as you said, if you could do a first Vakanainen and DeBrusk, have a hard time not doing that. I mean,
Yeah.
that improves you. That gets. I don't know if that gets you to be like better than Toronto, Tampa, and Florida, like in the regular season,
Hmm.
but it gives you a way better shot against them in the postseason. And as you said, the hard truths coming with an all-in mindset is you're gonna have to part with some stuff you might not want to part with. But I still don't think you do the untouchables, right? Like we've not talked about this. Swayman, you would not trade Swayman, right?
I don't think so. I mean, even a guy like Chikrin, I think there's just maybe too much risk with that. And I know that sometimes goalies they can vary from year to year. It's tough to like map out. Like you look at Kata Hot's first year, right? When he first came on the scene, you're like, oh, they can't trade this guy for anything. Look at like
Kind
even
of
like
hot.
I know, damn it. Even like Binnington, right? Where it's like you look at his game now and how it's dropped off. And again, you got a cup out of it, so good for St. Louis. But it's so tough to find like a goalie that you can pencil in year after year after year and know you're getting very good to great value out of them year in and year out. It's so tough to find. So who knows if Swayman is that guy? Let's say you trade him for Chikrin. It helps you out. Like again, Chikrin helps you out in the short term, and you've got a potential elite top pair for the next 4 or 5 years at the minimum, right? Maybe it helps you out. Maybe you win a cup, but say it doesn't work out and Swayman becomes a guy who wins 2, 3 Vezinas, and it's a what could have been. And again, it all comes down to or what the plan is going forward. If Rask is, one and done, then I don't think you're moving Swayman. If Rask comes back and is like, yeah, I want to play for another 3, 4 years, and you've got Olmark, then maybe you wait. It's not you're not moving a guy like Swayman for rental like Hurdle. Even if I think Hurdle signs a contract with you, still doesn't like warrant giving up a guy like Swayman, especially considering that you're already going to be in kind of cap hell signing whatever mega deal Hurdle has. Miller's not worth it. Chikrin, even then, guy who's had a couple of knee injuries. It's so tough. Just like I could be convinced if you want to part ways with one of a guy like Lysell or Lori, if it's a legit guy that makes you better this year and in the years ahead. No guy like Claude Giroux or like a 1 year one and done guy, right? But if it's someone that you can build as a foundational piece like Chikrin, who's 23 and he's able to stay healthy, then you consider it. But again, I think the Bruins are much more comfortable moving, even if it's another first round pick, which I think when you're in this win now window, you just make the most of it. If you, as we've said, if you move another first round pick and you give up Vakanainen and DeBrusque, but you keep Lysell and Lorai and you add JT Miller, you improve your team for this year, next at the very least, and you still have a few blue chip guys down in the minors who are going to keep on working on their game. And again, who knows how these guys kind of pan out? It's so tough to kind of project how the farm system kind of develops. The Bruins could very well sign a guy like, Mark McLaughlin as a UFA, and he becomes a key cog. Like Oscar Steen has molded into a pretty effective NHL guy. Vakanainen, as we said, is now looking like at the very least, an everyday NHL player. So it's so tough to map out these guys. But if you give up another first round pick, I don't think it's the end of the world if you add a piece that helps you out in the short term.
That would be the most Bruins thing ever if they went out and got Mark McLaughlin
Yes.
from BC. That would be the
Of
most,
course.
obviously, which
Pride
wouldn't be a
already.
bad thing. Good two-way center works, right? I mean, good bottom six guy potentially. But yes, no. It's funny. I was just thinking about as you were talking when you mentioned Swayman. Swayman would be like, damn. I used to be in the NHL with the Bruins. Then they moved down to Providence. Then they send me to Arizona to play in
Arizona
college
State,
again.
yeah, Arizona State, yeah.
Just get shafted. So yeah, going from the pros to the AHL, back to
Probably had
college.
more fans at Alphon than he would at a poor
Oh
Arizona game. So
yes. Oh my God, yes. Well, see, it's funny. Arizona State hockey is good. So like they will have fans. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. We're gonna go back on this, and Arizona State will have more fans in attendance for than Coyotes games. 100%. I would honestly, I would way rather watch an Arizona State college game than Arizona Coyotes any day of the week. Seriously, any day of the week, I would rather do that. Not just because it's my job, but because I genuinely
factors
find
into it
it
a little bit.
more interesting. Yes, you got to do a little bit of that. Just like my TNT tweets last night. TNT was perfect. It was great. I'd never seen a better TNT I've never seen a better hockey broadcast ever. It was 10 out of 10 perfect in my opinion. For the
Good
brand.
job, Evan.
There we go. I did my thing for the day. Anyways, Connor, before we go, what can the people look forward to over at BSJ and the Dunks parking lot?
Yeah, we will continue, hopefully not from the Dunks parking lot, but I'll continue to work on a few breakdowns we have from the Colorado game. We'll look ahead to the rest of the week. You got the Kraken coming here next week, which hopefully is a good
Ooh.
rebound game for the Bruins, because that game could get out of hand in a hurry. If they lose that game, the Bruins, then it's not that great. But you look at kind of their schedule here. They got some time off in the days ahead. We'll probably do mid-season report cards will be coming out. Makes me sound like a teacher, but we'll probably be looking at that. A few things assessing the state of this team kind of at the midway point. So all that stuff will be over at BSJ. So subscribe to BostonSportsJournal.com. Want to follow me on Twitter? You can do that at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that for CLNS Media. I'm Marinofsky. That's Conor Ryan of Boston Sports Journal. You Poke the Bear listeners. Have an awesome rest of your week.